My name is Susan Flowers Benton. I'm an assistant professor at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I am the PI for the Project E3 Targeted Communities Technical Assistance Center. I took over this position in June of 2019 after the untimely passing of Dr. Alo Dutta, who was really the driving force behind getting Project E3 implemented. So Project E3 was funded by the Department of Education, Rehabilitation Services Administration specifically. And what we are tasked with doing is working with state, federal VR centers, agencies, and community-based organizations to address some of the barriers that these organizations have identified for specific populations within their communities. So they identified the VR centers or VR agencies, state, federal VR agencies identified populations within the disability community that they wanted to work with more closely, that they felt that they weren't serving as well as they could. And Project E3 focuses on those populations. Project E3 was a partnership between 6 academic partners. So you had Southern University, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Wisconsin-Stout, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, University of Kentucky, and we also partnered with George Washington University, which is the focus. Their work is the focus of this webinar. And we also had a state partnership with CSA VR. Each of the academic partners had 2 states across the country. So for a total of 12 states. And within these 12 states, there were 2 identified, what we called targeted communities. So there was a primary site and a replication site in another community. Each of the states and each of the targeted communities themselves really had different needs. And so again, academic partners and VR agencies worked together very closely to identify what the needs were in each specific community with each targeted population within that community, and came up with strategies to address these barriers. This particular webinar focuses on the very important work that was done by our partners at George Washington University. So on behalf of Southern's leadership team, we would like to thank Dr. Maureen McGuire-Kulitz, Dr. Kenneth Hergenrather, and DJ Ralston for all of the work that they've done. This is the story of the Virginia part of this project and what lessons they have learned and what they've been able to accomplish as part of Project E3.
Why did DARS decide to participate in Project E3?
Our program focused primarily on getting a job. That's what we are. We're a workforce program, vocational rehabilitation. It's all about get a job. But we never really were good at focusing on helping the individual with a disability move out of poverty or assure they would not live a life of poverty. So, of course, we paid it lip service. We've always used terms in rehab like getting to independence, achieving self-sufficiency. But we never defined that, and we never had any tools to help make sense out of it. And that had always been a real frustration of mine as the VR director. And I came from a background in social work, so I always worked poverty programs. But VR was never thought of as a way to move a person into a life where they would really live a good quality of life. It was about getting a job. So I also struggled with the fact that as VR professionals, we've accepted that it's okay to be on Social Security. That's an acceptable plan. We didn't put effort into financial independence, economic security. And we would say, oh, let's get a person a part-time job because that's what they want. so they can keep their Social Security. Like, that's a goal. Even we work TANF programs. It's a successful outcome in TANF to move from public assistance to Social Security. We would get kudos for that in our grants with our Department of Social Services. So I really wanted to see that we move people out of poverty and that we help our counselors see that people can leave the Social Security roles. I still see that as successful outcomes from some of our counselors. And I really want those of you who are listening to this video to think about individuals living fuller lives. And then this grant came along and it was an aha moment. Oh, hey, let's really develop some tools. Let's think about financial literacy. That's a term I never thought of before, which that's even embarrassing. So I realized that our counselors didn't either. So when GWU came to us and said, we have this opportunity for you, it was their grant. I said, yes, please pick us. We want to be involved in this. So here we are. We've been involved in this grant and I've seen great success. And I also hope that in the future, we see part of the VR process as providing individuals the tools for financial empowerment, that is a regular part of the VR process. WIOA 2014, way back when, included financial empowerment as a part of the plan, a part of what Congress saw as important. So when this opportunity came along, I said, yes, please pick us, and here we are.
I was able to attend maybe the second session of starting in our Hampton Roads area. Martinsville had actually started. I was hearing great things about it, and then I had an opportunity to go to one of the beginning meetings in the Hampton Roads area. And I can truly say that throughout this project, now expanding not only in those two areas, but now in our entire state, Commonwealth of Virginia, and introducing it to all of our counselors, we are all at the opportunity to really help our clients and the community at large leverage resources, come together, educate each other on how we can work together in this integrated resource teams to really look at expanding the quality of services that we can offer to our clientele throughout the Commonwealth, working together to look at who actually has the funding to support a client, a customer, and being successful and getting out of poverty, as well as empowering them and understanding financial literacy, but just working together and actually utilizing the resources as a team approach, not a silo approach, which we had been doing before this project came to Virginia. So I'm very grateful that we're seeing a movement and a new direction in our agency and with our community partners, that we're able to kind of come together, staff cases of common clients that we serve together, and actually talk about how we make them successful.
Well, I'd like to add to what Dale said, that it's great to see more of our staff think about other resources our clients could utilize, but also that their community and partners are much broader than we thought initially. One of my favorite examples about this project has been some of the learning that our own staff have seen. And when you work in an office for a long time, you get to know the staff and you get into patterns where, oh, I call this person for this specific item and this person for this item. And just as WIOA changed a lot of our focus in 2014, similar things happen across all of our partners in an ongoing way. And taking a project like this allows us to review and collect and coordinate with our partners in a way to see what are things like today and how have they changed? And it allows us to provide better services and create stronger partnerships with more referrals back and forth. And I feel like with the use of the community academies and what that has shown in different offices, we have found so many resources we wouldn't have thought of because they didn't naturally present themselves. And so when you bring everyone together to talk about what they're doing and how it's changed, you have the opportunity for communication on that higher level that allows people to hear about things and insert clients they're working with that, hey, John could benefit from that, and I wouldn't have thought about that program, or Judy over here can benefit from this, and it wouldn't have been something that otherwise would have come into the thought of the traditional rehab process for our clients. And we're seeing that across each of the offices in very different ways because of the unique opportunities in each community. And I'm excited that that will get to happen now across the rest of the state.
I also find that the project has helped counselors to embrace the idea of it taking a village, and thinking creatively and outside of the box to tap into resources and people who have, you know, put other strengths and skills and interests that maybe we didn't know about, like David was talking about. It has empowered the VR counselors also to approach service provision with an eye towards the whole person and really think long-term in terms of their financial stability, their future, and leading to more independence and a fuller life experience.
I must admit, initially, I was a little reluctant to accept, you know, the idea that, you know, because someone had a disability that they, you know, were automatically or inadvertently or instinctively, you know, in poverty. And so I have to admit that, yes, this greatly impacted me with the trainings, with Bridges, you know, just going through the data, understanding the statistics. You know, it did teach me a lot about the correlation and the intersection between disability and poverty, and getting a better understanding of the concept of poverty, and, you know, the overreaching concept of poverty versus just having a narrow view of poverty. And so while we have, I think as an office and as individuals and professionals, we have a lot of experience working with individuals with disability. And, you know, we do understand being in a rural community that does have, you know, high unemployment rates and have experienced, you know, just some disadvantaged situations with regard to our economics. This whole process definitely helped us, at least it helped me better understand that those two intersect. And now when I'm approaching a customer, you know, when a customer comes in, I do have a lens that's automatically now, you know, instinctively thinking, okay, financial literacy, you know, how do we help this person to the next step? You know, it's not just about a job now. I'm thinking more about that concept of poverty.
One of the things that I'm sort of piggybacking off of what Shermail is saying, but our United Way also was doing Bridges Out of Poverty training. And I know I sat in some of the meetings when they'd have the group come together. And I think the interesting thing to me was to really come to understand some of the community barriers that people who are working hard to change their circumstances really have. I think I was really naive to that. I mean, many of the people I work with, and probably DARS too, are on SSI or SSDI, so I accept the fact that these are not people who are necessarily well off. But it was just, it was something I had to really think about in terms of how the community and community leaders were seeing this issue, and wonder if that's a place for further work in terms of any of us trying to eliminate barriers and helping people to move forward and benefit from all the things that were discussed in the E3 trainings.
Yes, I'm Tracy Hinchcliffe, and I'm the Executive Director for Grace Network here in Martinsville and Henry County, and that is a crisis center that helps people of all abilities, but it helps people primarily with rent housing for those that are at risk of being homeless, and utility assistance for those that are about to face a cutoff. So we deal day in and day out with those that are stuck in poverty. And then we also have people coming to see us. Of course, this year has been quite the unique year out of all of them, because we're even seeing people now that have never had to ask for assistance in their lives that are being put into positions where they are. But getting back to this project, about 30% of the clients that walk through our door are on SSI of some sort or disability. And so that really puts it in perspective, at least for us, when you're looking at a third of the clients that are that are stuck in poverty or that, are in crisis, are also disabled. So that just really opened my eyes in this project. It made me really go back and take a look at those figures and look at that with just a more open mind. And the other part of just being part of this, which I was just honored to be asked to be, just even a part of this project, is just the ongoing challenge of any community for all of the resources within a community to continue to strive to work together. If we don't work together, none of us will be successful.
Targeted communities had me think about things in a lot of different ways as I went through it and learned a lot. First, really paying attention to the financial piece, which before I would just, put that off as a referral to another resource, perhaps to help our customers manage their finances, when it's really all incorporated into an employment and into their successful outcomes. That's one area. The second area is really, instead of DARS being a single entity that we work with clients on our own, and same thing, refer out to other agencies, to really glue together the agencies that benefit the client specifically for that client, and share responsibility, share services, so that you get the outcome you're looking for and you don't duplicate.
Some of the things that we dealt with surrounding disability and poverty, specifically with my mindset and perception towards clients who, by and large, coming from a SUD background, are going to have criminal backgrounds, and by extension, having lower incomes because certain jobs prevent or certain backgrounds prevent having higher paying jobs. So just having a mindset to think from a poverty perspective, because by and large, we counselors come from the standpoint of a middle class, for the most part, perspective. So just going through the program and collaborating with other stakeholders in the community, and just reflecting on the way thought processes go, and how to more effectively deliver services to our clients. And also a personal bias that I realized I had was because of the criminogenic factors that are there. Many times, as some people refer to them as stopgap jobs or lower paying jobs, that would be the main focus of emphasis, because these were jobs that were accessible. And even the mindset of some of the individuals that we worked with were, I just want a job. But they have abilities to do more than necessarily what we think they can. It just takes more advocacy on our part. So, just thinking out of the box a little bit, as far as, backgrounds aside, other disability related issues aside, what can they do, to maximize for careers as opposed to just temporary jobs.
This was a phenomenal experience for me, coming in with a different background, not workforce, and looking at how we provide services, and really that we lack the accessibility for people. It was, okay, they came in and let's make an appointment and we'll have everything in place, but that puts another burden on them. We were creating while we thought we were meeting just the bare minimum. We really weren't taking into consideration, like, now we're sending them away and having them come back. And that can make them feel bad, like they're a burden to us, and it's really not. So it was looking at what we can do to have things in order for when someone walks into the door. That way we're not sending them out. And it has changed the way we've operated. We have video conferencing on demand. So now if anyone is hearing impaired, we have that ability to have an interpreter like within 30 seconds is when they answer. We have plenty of cameras, we have the microphone, we have the privacy set up for it. And we really took the time to walk through and have our partners walk through with us from and experience our AJC and let us know what we were doing. I don't want to say wrong, but just what we thought was helping and really isn't. And having someone come in and explain to us, because sometimes you think you're helping, but all you're doing is pointing out how they're different instead of listening to how they want to actually be supported and what's most useful to them. So it's changed, and I can definitely go on what Johan has said. It's changed the way I looked at people in general, and changed my perspective. And that's not just disabilities, but coming out of poverty, why they make certain decisions. And it doesn't seem to make sense to me, but it makes perfect sense. And again, just the way we were providing services was creating more and more barriers to them. We think we're make an appointment, just come, and it's not just come. Are they taking time off of work? Is it hourly? Can they afford childcare? How are they going to get there? Is it accessible? And if it's not, so now we offer services in like 3 different platforms so that as much as we can, we're in 3 different ways that they're not having to take time off of work. It's either self-paced or we can do it virtually instead of trying to get them to come in to our center. And that all came from my early interaction with this and just realizing we thought we're doing amazing, but we could always do better, and to struggle to continually do better and have new people come in and look at how we're doing things. And if better resources are out there, then we need to change how we're doing that.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Catherine said. This process has really made me realize the simple importance of a bus ticket and how critical and expensive that is for many of our customers in getting to in-person appointments. And, you know, before it's like, oh, they don't care about, you know, they're not invested. They don't care about coming. We're going to close their case. Whereas if you really now use that different lens, you realize that a bus ticket versus diapers or food or whatever it is, or going to work, makes that big difference. And I do agree with Catherine that this virtual platform in many respects has opened accessibility and availability for our consumers to reap the benefit of meeting with us without some of those financial and time burdens that were there.
When this project started, one of the big pieces of work I was involved in was our Ticket to Work program. Within that role, we saw lots of folks move close to working their way off benefits, but never quite getting there. But we also saw lots of folks who did work their way off of benefits only to come back for services a year or 2 later because we hadn't added this other piece around financial empowerment. And we had begun to develop a few tools within kind of thinking through financial empowerment and what that would look like through our work incentive services, but it still wasn't enough. And we were still seeing folks come back because even though we'd got them a job or helped them get a job where they were making in the low 30s to early 40s, and that's a decent amount of money, they were coming back because we hadn't helped equip them with tools to think about recurring ongoing expenses related to their disability. And when we think of the populations we serve, on average, someone living with a disability, it costs them 30% more of their income goes towards disability expenses than someone without a disability. So I think we do our clients a disservice if we don't help factor some of these things in and help work through how can we assist you, not just with the job today, but make sure you're in a position for that next opportunity and the one after that. So that's a big part of why this was near and dear to my heart related to the work we're doing. When you meet people where they're at, it's not a quick fix. Helping someone understand and build credit and assets is something that takes a long period of time. Those goals are really important, they're not necessarily best placed within VR. However, that relationship a VR counselor has with their clients is so critical and can be such a motivating force for those changes that when we compare the therapeutic alliance of our counselors with the longer term programming and those resources in the community that will be there before, during, and after VR service, we are really setting up those individuals for the opportunity for long-term success and meaningful change in their lives. And I think that's a big piece of what we're trying to build with the programs we're developing with the Centers for Independent Living.
You know, I really think it's worth pointing out that, you know, Centers for Independent Living have been working in this space already, right? And you know, we'll see many consumers who come to CILS wanting to, you know, set a personal resource management goal, let's say, for themselves, to gain this stability. And so this is, you know, the kind of the capacity that we've had to bring some additional tools and resources and expertise to that effort, I think has sort of allowed us to put our foot on the gas a little bit and increase the efficacy of what's going on day to day. So what I think is worth pointing out is that, you know, this is something that is already such a need. So it's not something it's falling from the sky. It's hitting where the work is going on already.
I'd love to add to that. The agency's mission, let me throw that out there a little bit, is to improve the employment, quality of life, security, and independence of older Virginians with disabilities, and their families. This Targeted Communities Grant and our effort going forward pulls all of those together. And by our VR program, working with our Centers for Independent Living, we really are wrapping our arms around our whole mission and not just dissecting pieces of it and being siloed within our own agency. And we've used this grant to help communities come together to do a better job of working as a team and collaborating to provide individuals the best services they can obtain in order to live a future with financial independence. But it's also helped us do that within our own organization. And I also see us building on that and working more closely with our area agencies on aging, as well as brain injury programs and others, so that as a whole agency, we're able to look at helping people live lives that are fuller and better quality of life.
The IRT model is basically, it's a grassroots bottom-up approach to providing holistic services for consumers and helping them achieve their employment goal. And it really, it seeks to bring together these multiple providers around the needs of one individual without requiring you all to have like these formal MOAs and MOUs. Because I feel like, you know, one of the big barriers oftentimes to like collaboration, especially, you know, at our community levels. And when we start thinking about, oh, WIOA and vocational rehabilitation is supposed to do this, and the American Job Centers do this, and the job training programs do this, and adult basic education does this. And you know, people kind of get grounded and stuck. It gets in like analysis paralysis. And so our hope was that the integrated resource team model was a tangible way for you all to be able to come together around the needs of an individual that didn't really require you to do anything outside of your program, or that would be outside of your authority of your program, right? So
I do think there's so much value in that IRT team meeting process. And you know, being able to get everybody in the same room is hard, and getting the folks prepped for that stage of it was not always easy. But once you get to that, and you have everybody in the room talking about, and the person that we're talking about's there and leading it and explaining what it is they want to achieve and how, you know, what their dream is, just really brings together, I think, everybody and the focus. And I had a mom that called me afterwards and was just like almost crying because it was just so impactful to know that there were so many people there that could support him and help him. And she really didn't quite put together everybody's piece. I mean, it's hard, you go to this agency and that agency and you hear so much and you just don't always remember who does what. And it just, in that setting, I think it's just, it's common sense, I guess. And we just don't always take time to do it. But I think we've seen over and over the value of doing that.
In recovery world, we say nothing about me without me. And that's what I first thought of when we said do the IRT things, because basically in the human service world, we do all these wonderful provider meetings and do not include the individual who we're serving. So I was glad when we were able to include the individuals that we were serving, because they need to know what's going on and everybody's on the same page. And also it eliminates them, because sometimes the people that I get to work with can be a little bit manipulating. So they might tell Shamel one thing and tell me something else. So this keeps us all on the same page. And I just really was grateful for that. And then I was grateful for the trainings. Like, I had motivational interviewing, but some of my staff had not. And because of funding, we were able to send, you all allowed me to send my staff be trained on motivational interviewing. And for the service that we would provide at CRP, motivational interviewing is a benefit to the people we serve, because our folks tend to not always be motivated, and not necessarily just because they don't want to do it. Sometimes I'm finding out now that fear is a big motivator for the folks that we work with. So I just appreciate being a part of the E3 project. And I also want to chime in on what Tracy said, because now I have a clear understanding. We've been working with DARS since I've been at CRP, but I didn't know everything that DARS did. I just knew they were, very good supporters of the program. But now I know I can call Shamel and we can really talk about what we can do for this individual. So I'm just appreciative to be a part of it. And I hope we'll continue after all this is over, because I'll be honest with you, I need y'all. My folks can't make it without all of us working together. It takes a village for the people I get to serve every day. Thank you.
Being trained on the integrated resource model, observing the experts do it, and then carrying that out ourselves, that, it's a really different approach. It sounds like a regular old team meeting, but when you experience it, it is really not. And the client is definitely the center of the meeting. The client is empowered, center focused. All eyes are on the client and what the client's saying, and just every agency coming together to try to collaboratively work together has had amazing creative outcomes with all the agencies and trying to meet the specific needs.
I think what was the beauty of the IRT model is that it really is, one, it's client focused or client centered. And two, it really is at the heart of what the legislation was getting at. I have a colleague in another part of the state that said, what WIOA did is forced us to get married and we didn't even know we were dating. And so, and here now we have partners that we're supposed to be working collaboratively with without duplicating services. And I think the IRT model does that because there's open communication between the partners. The challenge with it is that it must get to the staff that are at the heart of working with the client. So in my role, it was really important, I immediately saw that it was a positive thing to incorporate. However, the focus then for me was to make sure that all of my staff who actually are working with the client or with the adult ed students were then brought into those trainings so that they had that experience. And then they were connecting with the staff of the other agencies and partners that were also working with those clients. So I think that if there's any challenge, it's just making sure that it's such a great model, but that it needs to get to the people, the staff that are actually working with the clients. And that's the biggest thing, is bringing it to the staff.
I think the IRT was really, really good. We had, I'm sure you guys remember Jasmine. She was with the CPID, the Career Pathways for Individuals with Disabilities. She has since left, but it made sense. So we started pulling her into the targeted communities meetings with what she was doing. And she had one participant that, this poor lady that was pregnant at the beginning when she first started her training, and then ended up homeless and was sleeping in her car and then didn't have food. And it was really neat to see how we could plug into the resources that she was already working with, get in with Margie, and we're able to, like, we got her the pregnancy clothing, she got into the free clinic to get the ultrasound and the care that she needed, like, to get not just her training kind of took the back seat to ensuring that a life situation she found herself in was taken care of, and that her and her child were going to be healthy and safe, especially, I think it was wintertime, it was like this time last year, which was nice. We've also learned with our other staff that wasn't as intimately involved with targeted communities or the CPID grant, just kind of forcing them into some of the training or dragging people along, that the IRT, when it works, when people are involved, it does so much more than just, hey, it will alleviate work for you, which that's always the way to start off, is that little bit of effort in the beginning will save you tons of work. You don't have to do that, or if someone else is doing the testing, now you don't have to do that part. You can just do the other pieces of your puzzle. But it really worked out, and we saw it in several different instances where it provided more dignity for our participants. You know, we did a training on trauma-informed care, which was tremendous for me, and I was so thankful and blessed to be able to attend, but it opened my eyes to every single time someone's got to repeat what they went through. Like, you're just kind of picking at that scab, but then you're always having to, it's like you never can get over it and heal. And then if they're going from one organization to another and having to say the same thing over and over and ask for help more than once, like, the first time's hard enough to ask for help. You should be able to go to your DARS partner or your AJC and talk to your counselor, and then they're the ones that plug into the other resources and help kind of smooth that pathway, instead of, here's the map of resources, you can't see the trees for the forest kind of thing. And that, I think the IRT really helped with eliminating a lot of the noise and saving that for them, and just making it less painful to get the resources that they needed.
And I think the IRT, I mean, it's when we choose someone to be part of an IRT team, they've got multiple barriers, multiple concerns. And through the process, it's almost relieving to the staff person, because it's not all on their shoulders. There was a whole team put together to help answer the questions that are needed and find the resources. So it's almost a relief for the staff person, also for the client. Imagine how the client feels with all those things going on in their life that are, you know, tremendous. And I think it gives a lot of hope to the clients. In one of the IRTs, it was a father and son, and the father actually started tears in his eyes and just said, I've never felt so hopeful. This has given me hope. So I just think it alleviates some of the fear and anxiety, and gives a concrete kind of plan and resources and a map, as you say, to answer some of the needs, so that a client can move forward, and the agency for their needs.
This IRT model kind of reminded me of an old African proverb, it takes a village. I just felt like this IRT was like, we were that village to help those clients, and clients do come in and they're scared. And, you know, working with DARS, you know, we're supposed to focus on employment, but they come in with a lot of needs. And instead of me having to say, okay, well, go here and take care of this, and then come back to me and tell me what you found out, you know, just to be able to sit down at the table. And I'm the kind of counselor, you know, I like to be there every step of the way with my clients from start to finish, and to be able to actually sit down with other agencies and work together as a team. I feel like it gave the clients a lot of confidence, and to let them know that, you know, they do have support.
It also helped with just realizing who and what we have in our area. You did the community academies, and then we did another virtual one, which was eye-opening for me, because I'm not from Virginia. So I'm a transplant, not even from the region, just all over. So realizing what is here outside of our regular partners and how to think outside the box and to build those relationships before there's a need.
For me, it was the Community Academy, just because I got to learn about all the different agencies and the resources that they provide, so that way I could better serve my consumers and send them to whatever services that would be helpful to them as well. So me knowing more in turn helped them.
I realize now that I really didn't have those strong relationships, but because of the agencies that we meet on a monthly basis, and just as Catherine shared, we talk about things. Now we consult with each other on issues. We share resources. We talk about problems. That has been huge for me. And for our advisory council right now, we have a really strong one. We have Catherine, we have Rachel, we have Department of Social Services, we have a WISA representative, we've got United Way. I'm not remembering everybody, but that has been really profound for me in this, as part of this targeted communities experience.
And I also think by developing those relationships and building upon those relationships comes more opportunity. And so, I see it as, when I, if there's other grant opportunities now, because of the relationships we have, we can go for those funds, or we can apply for that grant because we already know the players and we have working relationships with them. It's not a problem to, get a letter of support, or because that's, the relationship has been established and built on. And I think that's really important. I think there's other parts of the state where maybe we have partnerships, but they're at this level and they're not in working directly with each other. And so that to me has been a real plus with the work group, especially, is having that that monthly contact with my DARS and other partners.
What advice would you give another community who might be interested in learning more about some of the things that you all have done? Advisory groups, community academies, integrated resource team, understanding disability and poverty. Like what type of advice would you give a community who maybe had some curiosity around this, but doesn't quite know the whole of it that you all have experienced?
I would say the main thing would be is to enter into it with an open mind, number one. And then number two, not see it as additional work. The saying goes, I think it's a ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, something like that. Or I might be reversing that. But point being, on the front end, that investment will pay so much more dividends later. So, it's coming in with that positive mental attitude as far as, okay, it's about the clients at the end of the day. It's going to enhance not only the clients, but your relationship with community stakeholders and everything like that. That will be the main thing, because I think perspective coming in will affect the degree to which an individual will be open to this new thing. Because I do realize that when you hear about something else, especially I'm speaking from a counselor standpoint, with additional paperwork and various things like that, not having a perception that, okay, this is just more on my plate versus this is something that could potentially greatly enhance what it is that I do. I think, you will go a long way.
I also think there's got to be at least one person who's willing to pick up the baton. And I really just want to give a shout out to Margie, because we really, I know having a monthly meeting is not always an easy thing for everybody, but you know what? She did it. She got it on our calendar. We had an agenda. And the reality is that the agenda could be really, really loose. But the point is that not that it was, but that it didn't have to be, it didn't have to be every single detail. And that was the beauty, is that I think at least to have, if I was to recommend or give any advice, is that if you at least have 1 or 2 people who would really pick up the baton to start it. You know, I feel like once it gets started, you know, you've got others now that would be willing to, you could pass the baton on to, because we're now invested in it. But I think the initial beginning of how do you develop, you know, this type of relationship and to carry this forward is you have to have someone, at least 1 to 2 people who's really willing to start it and to be the leader to kind of move things along.
Include everybody. Don't feel like it's just the counselors or it's just these, you know, anybody who's in some mid-level position or whatever. Include everybody, and they'd be amazed at how much every person has to offer and can work with this process and can make it successful. Every single one. I mean, there are times when Bonnie, Griselle, you know, they could do more with the customer than I could, and I was glad for another.
And not only include people within each agency, but all the agencies you can get your hands on. Bring them all in. Even if you don't think that they are, you know, that they even would be a part of this. It doesn't matter. Bring them in. Talk with them, because the more agencies that are out there, whether they're big, they're small, it doesn't really matter. There is value in all of that. And even if they take away 1 little inch of what all this is about, it brings that community together.
I think all the trainings were valuable in themselves, but I think the big benefit, has been said already, is spending time together, getting to know each other as people, not as phone numbers to refer people to. So the whole even in this little town, the whole network of agencies and people working with people with disabilities is pretty complex. And just spending time with, having lunch together, and is I think have been a big payoff. And thinking about going forward into the future, somehow maintaining that. Once a year we do something together, something valuable, but it may make less difference what it is than we do it.
And actually, Commissioner, that's a great segue, kind of, because you're opening the door here for us to talk about where do we go from here at this point?
We need to think differently about how we even start the beginning of we're serving a client. Who needs to be at the table? And then looking at the client from a vision or an eye that I was just at awe about when I sat in some of the meetings. We look at a client in a manner that we're accustomed to as a professional rehab counselor. If they are scheduled for an appointment and they don't show up, or they cancel appointments, I learned real quick through this project that we're so not even thinking about it, subconsciously believing that they're just not wanting to participate and ready to say they're not cooperative. This project has taught every counselor that sat through a training in it that we have to meet the client where they are. It's a cultural change for our division. It's a culture change for service delivery. It's a culture change to think about equality, equability, and inclusion. And how do we now think differently serving a customer and making sure that we're not biased in why they're not coming to the table, and help them and us understand collectively what we can do to maximize the services we can offer to them to make them successful. So I see us moving forward, thinking differently, a little bit of culture change. And as we look at inclusion and equability and equality, how do we now as a collective team use our resources to make that successful in Virginia?
But the things that are most exciting, and I feel so grateful to work for this agency, are how our commissioner and our deputy director have mandated that this become part of our culture. They're actually pieces of the new EWP for our counselors and our placement staff with language we've learned from targeted communities. we are utilizing our financial health assessments in plan development and as a part of the individual plan for employment. It's really exciting to see that we've been able to take time to develop internal trainings that will help us understand how to work with someone who's living in poverty as its own form of cultural competency, so we can move past those implicit biases and, again, not immediately dismiss someone because we don't understand the choice they may have had to make between coming to an appointment and caring for a child or getting to a job or a slew of other things. It's really exciting to see that it isn't just about DARS participating in the time-limited project of E3, but how can we take what's best and create a change in our culture as an agency across all staff levels and, again, across each department.
David, I'm glad you mentioned the moving away from the project. And I think it's time we stop talking about the project and it's time we talk about a way of doing business. David also mentioned the financial health assessment. And earlier on, I talked about how we didn't have the tools to think beyond getting a job. And today we do have that financial health assessment. And I believe every single individual we work with should have the opportunity to go through that financial health assessment, that our counselors understand it, they know where to refer people for assistance, and that every individual we work with, if they participate in a financial health assessment, it's not likely they will choose to stay on SSI because they'll understand what it means to meet those financial goals that they want to meet, that SSI check isn't going to cover their needs, even with a part-time job that we help find them. So I'm really excited about that opportunity. And I know our counselors who have been able to see the change are also excited to share that, and that we see that statewide, that it becomes a way of doing business. It's a cool thing.
One of the things I learned early on in this project was when you're working in an area where maybe counselors have a long history, sometimes the way you frame change is important. And I wish I had thought more about that, because in this case, it was such a big shift. It's not saying that what you've done and what you've done for the last 15 or 20 years wasn't good work. But sometimes that's how people hear things, even when that's not the intent. So I would say for other states, be thoughtful about those messages. But the other thing, as you can see from this video, I believe a huge part of our success has been the buy-in from our commissioner down. The fact that Kathy, Dee Dee, Susan, and Kevin have been able to step in ways to help at different points and continue that message. At our very first meetings, Kathy was there in Martinsville. When we moved to Hampton Roads, Dee Dee came down. At the very first community academies, Kathy came and opened one, Dee Dee came and opened another. So our partners got to see our leadership participating. That subtle message was a big part, I believe, of our managers and our district directors in those two areas seeing the value and importance.
We've had staff at all levels express an interest in participating in this, not just our counselors, but our placement staff, our workforce development staff, our employment support specialists, expressing an interest in getting involved, going through the training, participating in the work groups and so forth. It's pretty cool to see.
I think another thing we've been able to do in each community is those staff that really embrace this idea, when we've gone to do a wider rollout, when we had our statewide managers meeting, we made sure those staff who were heavily involved got to be in front of the whole group, sharing their experience, kind of elevating their space. So, when you get to pump people up and they get added opportunities, I think that kind of internal reward means a lot as well. And we built that in, whether it was in weekly reports that got disseminated to the whole state based on some of the activities, or those staff being invited to bigger meetings and they be the ones who shared information rather than it coming from central office saying, this was great and you should do it too. So that was another strategy that I think was a big part of the success.
I also think that showcasing, for lack of a better term, the results. I remember from our Martinsville office, some of the great success stories that were shared, how they were able to include the community, and they shared words of the individuals with disabilities themselves and how they saw their lives differently, and the expectations were elevated. And this really is all about expectations, that intersection of disability and poverty. We all are guilty of having low expectations of even ourselves. But so often we've looked at families and said, okay, that family has been dependent on Social Security or other public benefits their whole lives, and they see that that's okay. And so we say that's okay too, if that's what they believe. So it's all about raising our expectations and using all of the tools we have available, whether it's assistive technology or education and training opportunities for people. Even if they don't believe in those things themselves, when they sit down in front of us, we can raise those expectations and see that those folks can live a different life than they've always been used to living.